The rain hammered against the window of Arthur's study, its insistent rhythm mirroring the emptiness of his days. At 62, the retired engineer had learned to live with the silence, a silence heavy with the weight of 5 years without. His daughter, Luna, his hands, still steady despite his age, glided over the mouse as he navigated Google Earth, a ritual as automatic as breathing. The bluish-gray of the monitor reflected the sky outside. Arthur zoomed in on a region he knew by heart, the dense forest inland where Luna had disappeared. Every tree, every trail, every clearing were territories he had explored first, with his eyes, then with his feet, and finally with his broken heart. New dawn, he murmured, savoring the bitter taste of the words. That was the name of the spiritual community that had seduced his daughter. Luna had always been different, intense, inquisitive, with eyes that seemed to see beyond the visible. While other 22-year-old women worried about careers and relationships, Luna sought transcendence, hidden truths, connections with something greater than herself. The cursor trembled over an area he had never examined so closely. Something compelled him to zoom in further, as if an invisible force guided his movements. The image sharpened, revealing details previously lost in the pixelization, and then his heart nearly stopped. In the middle of the clearing, where there had been only trees before, stood a strange geometric structure. Concentric circles of stones formed eye-catching patterns, esoteric symbols, etched into the earth like sacred scars. But it was what was painted on the roof of one of the buildings that made his hands shake violently. A gigantic mandala traced in white paint that contrasted with the dark material of the roof. In the center, in tiny letters almost lost in the image's resolution, but which he recognized immediately, Arthur, find me. The image's date was 6 months ago. 6 months in which Luna had tried to communicate with him across space, through technology, through a message only a father could understand. Arthur pushed away from his chair as if it were burning. His lungs filled with air for the first time in years, as if he had been drowning and finally found the surface. Luna was alive. His daughter was alive and asking for help. The following hours passed in a blur of feverish activity. Arthur called all his old contacts, private investigators who had given up on the case, police officers who had closed the file, friends who had grown weary of his obsessions. Most didn't answer. Those who did listened with polite patience, but he could sense the skepticism in their voices. "Arthur, it could be anything," said Carlos, the private investigator he had hired 3 years earlier. "A prank, a hoax, someone who knows your story and wants to take advantage." But Arthur knew it wasn't. That mandala, those letters, that code only he and Luna shared, it was real. It was from her. It was a call. That night, as he packed clothes and equipment into a travel bag, Arthur allowed himself to remember. Luna as a child, running through the house's hallways, her dark hair flying like wings. Luna as a teenager, questioning everything, religion, authority, the very meaning of existence. Luna as a young adult, gradually distancing herself from her family, immersing herself in books on Eastern spirituality, attending lectures by gurus and mediums. "Dad, you don't understand," she had said in their last conversation. "There's something bigger than all this, something that goes beyond what we can see or touch. I need to find it." "But why do you need to distance yourself from us to find it?" he had asked, already feeling the chasm opening between them. "Because you are part of what holds me here. You love me, but that love is a golden chain. I need to break free to find myself." Those were their last words. 2 weeks later, Luna had vanished, leaving only a note saying she was going to meet her true spiritual family. Arthur drove through the night, crossing towns that slept under the cloak of a cold fog. The road unfurled before him like a black, hypnotic, and infinite serpent. He stopped only to refuel and drink bitter coffee at gas stations that seemed like islands of light, lost in the darkness. By sunrise, he was near Oakhaven, the last town before the forest where Luna had disappeared. The small town hadn't changed much. Cobblestone streets, low houses with clay roofs, a colonial church dominating the central square. But there was something different in the air, a tension he couldn't identify. Arthur decided to start his investigation at the guest house where he had stayed during his first searches. Mrs. Mercy, the owner, was a woman in her 50s, her grey hair always tied in a tight bun, her small, piercing eyes that seemed to see through people. "You're back, Arthur," she said without surprise, as if she had seen him the day before. "I thought you had given up." "I never gave up," he replied, placing his bag on the counter. "I need the same room." "Room 3 is still available." She studied him intently. "But things have changed around here. Those people from the woods, they're not the same." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Mercy hesitated, looking around as if afraid of being overheard. Before, every now and then, some of them would show up in town. They'd buy supplies, talk to people, strange but harmless. Now, nobody leaves anymore. And when someone tries to go in? What happens when someone tries to go in? Some come back changed, others never come back. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "They say the forest is different, that there are things there that shouldn't exist." Arthur climbed the stairs to his room, a small space with a single bed, an antique wardrobe, and a window overlooking the distant woods. He dropped his suitcase on the bed and walked to the window. The forest stretched as far as the eye could see, a dark green wall that seemed to pulse with life of its own. That afternoon, he went out to talk to the townspeople. What he found was a wall of silence and evasive glances. At the bakery, at the market, in the square, people changed the subject when he mentioned New Dawn. Some crossed themselves. Others simply walked away. It was at Ze Pequeños Bar, a dimly lit establishment that smelled of cheap whiskey and cigarettes, that Arthur finally found someone willing to talk. The man sat alone at a table in the back, a half-empty glass of whiskey. In front of him, he was about 40, with unkempt graying hair and a face scarred by what looked like burns. "You're the girl's father," the man said without looking up from his drink. It wasn't a question. "You know my daughter?" "I did. Pretty girl, eyes that seemed to see right through people." The man took a swig of his whiskey. "My name's Benedict. I was one of them, one of the fools who believed." Arthur sat down in the chair opposite him, his heart pounding. "You were with New Dawn?" "I was. 3 years of my life. 3 years that cost me far more than I could ever repay." Benedict finally looked up, and Arthur saw that one of his eyes was milky white, blind. "You want to know about your daughter? You want to know the truth about that place?" "I want to know everything." Benedict poured himself more whiskey, his hands trembling slightly. New Dawn started like many others, a group of people seeking something different, something greater. The leader, a man called Master Ananias, was charismatic, convincing. He spoke of spiritual elevation, of transcending the limits of body and mind. And Luna, your daughter, arrived about 5 years ago. She was special. Ananias saw it in her immediately. He said she had a gift, a connection to the other side that few possessed. Benedict took another drink. At first, it was all very beautiful. Meditations, purification rituals, simple living in touch with nature. But things started to change. How? Ananias became obsessed with the idea of crossing over. He said there was a passage, a portal between this world and the next. That if we could open this passage, we could transcend mortality, become beings of pure spiritual energy. Benedict's voice grew lower, more urgent. The rituals became more intense, more dangerous. He started demanding sacrifices, First animals, then other things. People started disappearing. Those who questioned were punished, those who tried to leave. What happened to those who tried to leave? I tried. 2 years ago, I managed to escape, but not without a price. He pointed to the scars on his face. Ananias said I had been marked, that I would carry the mark of betrayal forever. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. And Luna? Where is she? I don't know. When I left, she was still there. But I heard rumors. They say she became special to Ananias, that he chose her for something important. Benedict finished his whiskey in one gulp. If she's still alive, she's at the center of it all, in the heart of the woods, where they built the sanctuary. Can you take me there? Benedict laughed, a humorless sound. I can, but I won't. I've paid my price. I don't intend to pay again. Please, Arthur pleaded. It's my daughter, and I know what that means. I have children too, but I also know that there are things worse than death, things that happen in that place. She called me, left a message. She needs me. Benedict studied him for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. You're going to try to go anyway, aren't you? I am. Then at least go prepared. He stood up, swaying slightly. Meet me tomorrow at dawn on the trail that leads to the woods. I'll show you the way, but after that, you're on your own. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep. He stayed awake, looking out the window at the forest that disappeared into the darkness. Occasionally, he thought he saw lights moving among the trees, like giant fireflies or lanterns carried by invisible hands. But when he blinked, the lights vanished, leaving only the impenetrable darkness. At 5 in the morning, he met Benedict at the edge of the road. The man was different, more sober, more focused, carrying a backpack and wearing clothes suitable for a hike in the woods. Before we go in, Benedict said, you need to know a few things. The forest, it's not normal, not since they started. The rituals, you'll see things, hear things that don't exist, or that exist in a way our minds can't process. What kind of things? Voices, visions, memories that aren't yours. The forest feeds on all of that. Ananias says it's alive, that it's a conscious being they awakened. Benedict started walking towards the woods. Stay focused. Don't believe everything you see or hear, and if I tell you to run, run. Don't look back. The trail was almost invisible, a narrow slit between the trees that seemed to have been forced open. The first few hours of the hike were relatively peaceful. Benedict knew the way, moving with the confidence of someone who had walked these paths many times. But as they delved deeper into the forest, Arthur began to notice changes. The air grew denser, charged with a humidity that wasn't just from the woods. The sounds changed. The birdsong became higher pitched, almost metallic. The trees seemed taller, older, as if they had grown beyond their natural proportions. Do you feel it? Benedict asked, stopping to drink some water. Feel what? The presence. The forest is watching us, judging us. He looked around, his good eye gleaming with nervousness. Ananias always said the woods chose who could pass, that it tested the sincerity of our intentions. As if in response to Benedito's words, a whisper echoed through the trees. Arthur froze, trying to pinpoint the sound's origin. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. A voice that wasn't exactly a voice, but something that resonated directly in his mind. Arthur. It was Luna. Her voice, deeper, more mature, but unmistakably hers. Did you hear that? He asked Benedito. I did. It's beginning. Benedito quickened his pace. Don't stop, don't answer, don't believe. But the whispers continued, becoming clearer, closer. Luna called to him, sometimes by name, sometimes only with that laugh he'd known since she was a child. Occasionally, he could swear he saw her, a shadow among the trees, a reflection in a puddle, a movement in his peripheral vision. As they walked, the visions became more vivid. Arthur saw Luna as a child running ahead of him on the trail, laughing and beckoning him to follow. He saw teenage Luna sitting on a moss-covered rock, reading a book on spirituality. He saw young, adult Luna looking at him with eyes full of compassion and sorrow. "Father, I didn't want you to come," she said in one of the visions. "I didn't want you to see what I've become." "Don't listen," Benedito shouted. "It's not her. It's not real." But to Arthur, it was real. It was his daughter, his Luna, and she was suffering. She was asking for help, even if her words said otherwise. They stopped to rest when the sun was at its zenith. Benedito was visibly shaken, sweating profusely despite the forest's mild temperature. His hands trembled as he opened his backpack. "I shouldn't have come back," he mumbled. "I should never have come back." "It's all right," Arthur tried to comfort him. "Are we close?" "Very close, too close." Benedito drank some water, but his hands still trembled. "They know we're here. Ananias knows. He always knew." As if his words were a signal, the forest's silence was broken by a sound that made Arthur's blood run cold. It was a chant, multiple voices uniting in a melody that followed no known musical scale. The words were unintelligible, but the emotion behind them was unmistakable. Adoration, ecstasy, a devotion bordering on madness. "They're performing a ritual," Benedito whispered. "A ritual of great power. Can you feel it?" Arthur could. The air was charged with an energy that made his hair stand on end. His skin tingled, as if thousands of tiny electrical shocks were coursing through his body. And there was something more, a sense of presence, as if something immense and ancient were awakening. "Let's go," Benedito said, rising abruptly. "We have to get there before the ritual ends. Afterward, it might be too late." They ran. For the first time since entering the forest, they ran, leaping over fallen logs, pushing aside branches that tried to stop them, ignoring the thorns that tore at their clothes and skin. The chant grew louder, more urgent, echoing through the trees as if the forest itself was singing. And then finally, they reached the clearing. The sight that opened before them was both familiar and utterly alien. The structures Arthur had seen in the satellite image were there, but they seemed to have grown, expanded, taken on proportions that defied perspective. Concentric circles of stones spread across the ground, engraved with symbols that seemed to move when not directly observed. In the center of the clearing, where the white mandala should have been, was something that made Arthur question his own sanity. It was a circular structure made of black stones that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. In the center of this structure was an opening, not exactly a hole, but a distortion in the air, as if space itself were being bent and twisted. And around this opening, about 20 people danced and chanted in ecstasy. Their clothes were simple, white, but stained with substances Arthur preferred not to identify. Their faces were transfigured by an expression of terrible beatitude, as if they were seeing something beyond human comprehension. Among them, in the center of the dance, was a figure Arthur recognized immediately, even though she had changed drastically. It was Luna, but not the Luna he knew. This Luna was taller, thinner, with hair that had grown to her waist and eyes that gleamed with a light that wasn't quite human. She danced with a grace that defied gravity, her feet barely touching the ground. Her movements were hypnotic, ritualistic, as if she were conducting something beyond the dance, as if she were conducting reality itself. "My God," Benedito whispered. "She's the bridge. She's become the bridge." "What does that mean?" Ananias always spoke of the bridge, a special person who could connect our world with the other side, who could open the passage to transcendence. Benedito grabbed Arthur's arm. "But the bridge has to pay a price. It has to sacrifice its humanity." Arthur watched his daughter dance, and a part of him recognized that she was no longer entirely human. There was something in her that was other, that came from beyond what they knew, but it was still his daughter, still his Luna. "Father!" The voice came from behind him. Arthur turned and saw Luna. Not the one dancing in the clearing, but another Luna, more familiar, closer to the young woman he knew. She stood among the trees, smiling sadly. "You came," she said. "I knew you would." "Luna!" Arthur took a step toward her, but Benedito held him back. "No," he whispered. "It's not her. It's part of the ritual. She's splitting." "Dad, don't listen to her," Luna whispered from the trees. "It's me, the real me. That one, that's what they did to me. That's what I became to save you all. But the real me is still here, still waiting." Arthur looked from the Luna in the clearing to the Luna hidden among the trees. Both were real. Both were his daughter. But he knew he had to choose, and he knew that choice would determine not only Luna's fate, but the fate of everyone there. "How can I save her?" he asked the Luna in the trees. "You have to stop the ritual. You have to break the circle. But to do that..." She hesitated. "To do that, you'll have to trust me. Completely. Even if what you see seems impossible." Arthur looked back to the clearing, where the ritual was reaching its climax. The opening in the center was expanding, and through it, indistinct shapes were beginning to move. Things that weren't of this world, things that perhaps shouldn't exist. "What do you need me to do?" The Luna in the trees smiled, and for a moment she was again the child who used to run through the halls of their home. "I need you to cross over." Luna's words echoed in Arthur's mind like a terrible mantra. To cross. He knew what it meant, even if his rational mind refused to accept it. To cross the opening that was expanding in the center of the clearing. To cross to the other side where the rules of reality didn't apply. "He's mad," Benedito whispered, but his voice trembled with fear, not disbelief. "No one who crosses ever returns." "I don't need to return," Arthur replied, and realized he was speaking the truth. "I just need to bring my daughter back." Luna from among the trees approached, and Arthur could see tears streaming down her face. "Dad, do you understand what you're asking? Do you understand what you'll have to face on the other side?" "No, but I understand you need me, and that's enough." Benedito recoiled, shaking his head. I can't go back there. I can't face Ananias again." "Then leave," Arthur said without judgment. "Leave and forget you were ever here." But Benedito didn't move. He stood there, torn between terror and something that might be courage, or perhaps just the impossibility of abandoning another father to the same loss he had suffered. In the clearing, the ritual reached a new level of intensity. The Luna dancing in the center began to rise from the ground, her feet no longer touching the earth. Her skin glowed with a light that came from nowhere, and her eyes turned completely white. When she opened her mouth, it wasn't her voice that came out, but something much deeper, much older. "The passage is open," said the voice using Luna's vocal cords. "The first of those who wait can finally return." The opening in the center of the clearing expanded once more, and through it, Arthur saw things his brain refused to fully process. Impossible geometries, colors that didn't exist, beings that were more concept than form, and moving toward the opening, something that was clearly the leader, the first of those who wait. "Now," the Luna among the trees said urgently, "if you're going to do this, you have to do it now. As soon as he crosses completely, there will be no turning back." Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, gathering all the courage he possessed. He thought of Luna as a child, laughing as he pushed her on the backyard swing. He thought of Luna as a teenager, asking difficult questions about life and death. He thought of Luna as a young adult, searching for answers he couldn't give. When he opened his eyes, he was decided. "Stay here," he said to Benedito. "If I don't make it, at least you can tell what happened." Before Benedito could answer, Arthur emerged from his hiding place and walked toward the clearing. Each step seemed to weigh tons, as if he were walking against an invisible current. The air was thick, charged with an energy that made his skin tingle and his bones ache. The members of New Dawn saw him immediately. Some stopped dancing, pointing at him with expressions of surprise and terror. Others continued the ritual as if he were just another vision, another illusion created by the power being invoked. But it was Master Ananias who reacted most strongly. The man, if he could still be called a man, emerged from behind one of the structures. He was over 6 feet tall, thin to the point of skeletal, with pale skin that seemed translucent. His eyes were completely black, without pupils or irises, just 2 voids that sucked in the surrounding light. "The Father," Ananias said, and his voice echoed throughout the clearing as if coming from multiple directions. "The Father has finally arrived to witness the transcendence of his daughter." "I came to take my daughter home," Arthur replied, surprising himself with the firmness of his own voice. Ananias laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Your daughter no longer exists. She willingly surrendered to become something greater, something sacred. She is now the bridge between worlds, and through her, our true masters will finally return." Arthur looked at Luna, who continued to float in the center of the clearing. Her eyes were even whiter now, and when she looked at him, there was no recognition. It was like looking at a statue that had been animated by an outside force. "She's my daughter," Arthur said, "and I'm taking her home." "You don't understand." Ananias approached, his feet barely touching the ground. "The ritual has begun. The passage is open. The first of those who wait is already moving through the veil. There's no turning back." As if to prove his words, the opening in the center of the clearing pulsed, and something began to emerge from it. First it was just a shadow, then a form that defied perception, and finally something that was clearly intelligent, clearly ancient, clearly not of this world. The first of those who wait didn't have a defined form. It was constant change, constant movement, a presence that was felt more than seen. But Arthur could feel its attention, its hunger, its terrible joy at finally being free. And then, something unexpected happened. The Luna among the trees emerged from her hiding place and walked toward the clearing. As she approached, her form began to become more solid, more real, while the Luna floating in the center began to waver, to become more translucent. "No!" Ananias screamed. "This is impossible. The bridge has already been established. The ritual is complete." "The ritual is incomplete," the Luna who was walking said, and her voice carried an authority that made everyone stop. "Because the true bridge never agreed. Only part of it agreed. The part you manipulated, tortured, broke." She turned to Arthur, and he saw that her eyes were filled with tears, but also with ironclad determination. "Dad, what you need to understand is that I never completely left. Part of me has always been here, waiting for someone to come and get me, waiting for someone to love me enough to cross over." The first of those who wait emitted a sound like the roar of 1,000 storms. His presence intensified, and Arthur felt as if 1,000 needles were being driven into his mind, but he resisted, focusing on his daughter's face, on the real Luna before him. "How?" he asked. "How do I cross?" "You have to enter the opening," Luna said, her voice growing more urgent. "But you can't go alone. I have to go with you. The 2 parts of me have to reunite on the other side, where there's no longer a division between the real and the spiritual." Ananias moved to block them, his dark eyes blazing with fury. "You don't understand what you're doing. You're destroying years of work. You're preventing the evolution of humanity." "We're stopping your madness," Luna replied. "You didn't want to elevate humanity. You wanted to deliver it up." And then, in a move that surprised everyone, Benedito emerged from his hiding place. His hands trembled, his face was pale with terror, but he ran toward Ananias with a desperation-fueled determination. "For my son," he cried, "for my son whom you killed." Benedito collided with Ananias, and they both fell to the ground. For a moment, the ritual's concentration was broken. The Luna, hovering in the center of the clearing, descended, her form becoming more solid, more human. The first of those who, Wait hesitated, his passage temporarily interrupted. "Now!" Luna shouted to Arthur. "Now, Father! We have to go now!" Arthur didn't hesitate. He ran to his daughter, took her hand, and together they raced toward the opening in the center of the clearing. As they ran, he could hear Ananias screaming. He could feel the first of those who wait trying to fully manifest. He could see the other cult members moving to stop them. But they reached the opening first. The moment before crossing was suspended. In time, Arthur looked at Luna, his real daughter, and saw in her the child he had raised, the teenager who had questioned everything, the young woman who had searched for answers. He also saw something new, a wisdom that came from facing the impossible and surviving. "I love you," he said. "I know," she replied. "That's why you're here." And then they leaped. The sensation of crossing was like being torn apart and put back together simultaneously. Arthur felt as if every atom of his body was being separated and reorganized. His consciousness expanded and contracted, touching dimensions he had no words to describe. When the sensation stopped, he was in a place that was and wasn't the forest. The trees were there, but they were made of solidified light. The ground was there, but it was soft as clouds. The sky was there, but it showed constellations that didn't exist in his world. And Luna was there. Not two Lunas, but one. Whole, complete, real. "Where are we?" Arthur asked. "Between," Luna replied. "Between what is and what could be. Between the real and the possible." She smiled, and it was the smile he'd known forever. "This is where I've been all this time, learning, growing, waiting. And now we have a choice. We can stay here where we're safe, where nothing can hurt us. Or we can go back." She looked toward where they had come from. "But if we go back, it will be dangerous. Ananias is still there. The first is still trying to cross, and they will try to stop us." Arthur thought of Benedito, who had sacrificed everything to give them a chance. He thought of the other cult members, lost in their quest for transcendence. He thought of the world they had left behind. "If we stay here, they'll succeed," he said. "Ananias will complete the ritual. The first will cross." "Yes," Luna confirmed, "and many people will die. Then we have to go back." Luna smiled again, but this time there was sadness in the smile. "I knew you'd say that. It's always been this way. You've always put others before yourself." "Not always," Arthur said. "If I had done that sooner, maybe you never would have needed to look for answers elsewhere." "Father," Luna took his hands, "you were a good father. It was I who needed to find my own way. Sometimes that path leads to dark places, but it also leads to places like this." She gestured to the world around them, a place of impossible beauty and infinite peace. "But you're right," she continued. "We have to go back. We have to close the passage. We have to stop Ananias." "How?" "The passage can only be closed from the inside. Someone has to stay on the other side to seal the opening." Luna looked at him with infinite love and sadness, and that someone has to be me. Arthur's heart broke. "No, I won't lose you again." "Father, you never lost me. Even when I left, even when I joined New Dawn, even when I became part of the ritual, you never lost me because you never stopped loving me. And that love is what brought me back. It's what gave me the strength to resist." Tears streamed down Arthur's face. There has to be another way. There isn't, Luna said gently. But that doesn't mean we're separating forever. It just means I'll be in a different place, a place where I can help, where I can protect. She drew close and hugged him, and Arthur felt as if he were embracing not only his daughter, but all the hope, all the love, all the life he had shared with her. "Ah, you ready?" she asked. Arthur wasn't. He never would be. But he nodded anyway. Together, they returned to the opening. On the other side, they could see the chaos that had settled over the clearing. Benedito and Ananias were still fighting, but Ananias was clearly winning. The first of the waiting ones had almost fully manifested, its presence filling the clearing, with a darkness that devoured the light. "When I give the signal," Luna said, "you run. Run and don't look back. Get out of the woods and never return. Luna, promise." Arthur hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." They leaped back. The return was even more violent than the arrival. Arthur landed on the clearing floor hard enough to leave him dazed. When he recovered, he saw Luna rising beside the opening, her hands glowing with the same light he'd seen on the other side. "Ananias!" she shouted. "It's over!" The cult leader looked at her, and for the first time, Arthur saw fear in his dark eyes. "Impossible! You can't resist the calling. You are the bridge." "I was the bridge," Luna corrected. "Now I am the guardian." She placed her hands on the edge of the opening, and immediately it began to glow more intensely. The opening began to contract, and the first of the waiting ones emitted a roar of fury that made all the trees in the forest tremble. "No!" Ananias screamed, pushing Benedito away and running toward Luna. "You can't destroy everything. You can't stop evolution." But he didn't reach her. Benedito, even wounded, managed to grab his legs, causing him to fall. And at that moment, Luna looked at Arthur. "Now, Dad, run!" Arthur hesitated for a split second, wanting to stay, wanting to fight alongside his daughter. But a promise was a promise. He ran. He ran through the stone circles, through the strange constructions, toward the forest. Behind him he could hear the sound of the opening closing, the roar of the first of the waiting ones being forced back into its own realm, the screams of Ananias realizing that his entire life had been based on a lie. And above all those sounds, Luna's voice, clear and strong, singing a melody he didn't recognize, but that comforted his heart. Arthur ran through the forest for hours, guided by an inner light he didn't know where it came from. The trees seemed to move aside for him. The trails opened before him, as if the forest itself wanted to help him escape. When he finally reached the edge of the woods, the sun was rising. He turned to look back one last time and saw, in the middle of the forest, a column of golden light rising toward the sky. For a moment he thought he saw a figure in the light, a young woman waving to him. Then the light faded, and there was only silence. Arthur walked to Oakhaven, where he found the police and firefighters preparing to enter the forest. Apparently, an explosion had been reported, along with a strange light. He told them what he could, that he had found survivors in the woods, that there were injured people who needed help. Benedito was found 3 days later, alive but traumatized. Ananias and the other cult members were never found. The geometric structure had disappeared, leaving only a common clearing, indistinguishable from any other in the forest. In the months that followed, Arthur tried to return to his normal life. But normal was a concept that no longer applied. He had seen beyond the veil of reality. He had touched something that could not be explained by science or reason. Sometimes, especially on full moon nights, he dreamed of Luna. Not dreams of loss or grief, but dreams of connection. In them, she was fine, she was growing, she was learning. She was protecting the world from things he couldn't imagine. A year after the incident in the forest, Arthur received a letter with no return address. Inside, there was only a photograph, an Impossibly beautiful landscape, with trees of light and a sky of unknown stars. On the back, a message in familiar handwriting. Dad, I'm fine. I'm doing what I need to do. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go, and for loving me enough to come looking for me. One day, when the time is right, we will meet again. Until then, live for both of us, with eternal love, Luna. Arthur kept the letter in a special drawer, along with photos of Luna as a child, teenager, and young adult. Sometimes, when the longing became too strong, he would read it again and feel a peace he couldn't explain. He never returned to the forest. He didn't need to. He knew Luna was there, somewhere between worlds, doing her work, protecting reality from forces that sought to corrupt it. And he knew that somehow she was always with him. A father's love never retreats, and sometimes, just sometimes, love is strong enough to cross even the boundaries between worlds. On the quietest nights, when the wind whispered among the trees, in his backyard, Arthur could swear he heard her voice, distant but clear, singing the same melody she had sung in the clearing. And he would smile, knowing that his daughter had found her place in the universe, that she had become exactly what she needed to be. She was fine. She was where she needed to be, and that was enough.